Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome back. Welcome to another video. Very happy to be back. Man, chapter 300. Nope. 10,035, I think. Let me look at it. I believe it's 1035 or 10. Yeah, 1035. Zoro versus King. Man, this was a good one. So here's the thing. A lot of people so far have been saying that this fight seems like it was kind of rushed. Same thing with Sanji and Queen's fight. Personally, I don't think it's rushed. I think this whole arc is giving me Onigashima vibes, where it's just like everything's moving so fast. There's a lot of different fights happening all over the place at the same time. Oda's just kind of cutting back and forth from one to the other. So you really don't have that much time to spend on one particular fight. I mean, look, nobody's even talked about who's who versus Jinbei, and that's been going on this whole time too. I want to see who won that fight, even though I know it's Jinbei. But still, like, it seems like ever since Who's Who dropped that bomb on us about the sun god Nika, he just hasn't, like, Oda hasn't been giving him any shine. So it's just like, you know, you got a bunch of different fights going on. You got to give everybody at least a little bit of time. So I get it. It seems like the fights are going by pretty fast, but in reality, if you were to go and like make a compilation just like of all the scenes that we've seen of Zoro versus King or Sanji versus Queen, it's actually quite a lot. Like, it's enough to make maybe a full chapter or two full chapters, even. No, maybe longer than that, of just that fight. So it's not that Oda hasn't given us that much information. It's just that the fight's been going on for so long and we've been cutting in and out, so it feels like it was a quick fight, but in reality it was a pretty appropriately timed fight. I think another reason why a lot of people feel like these fights are going by kind of quick is because of the sort of some of the examples that we've seen in the past of like Yonko level fights. Most of the time they last for days, and as far as we know, I'm pretty sure that raid on Onigashima has only taken like a day. So the fight altogether seems kind of quick, but it's also just like mad chaotic. Like, it's so much stuff going on. You got Orochi burning down the castle. You got, you know, Yamato running around smacking people up. Nobody knows whose side she's on. You got, you know, Tama coming in with the Kibidango, turning the Beast Pirates onto the Straw Hat side, or onto the side of the Resistance or Rebellion, I guess you could call it. I mean, there's so much going on, there's so much chaos, and that it really does feel like a Marineford type of fight. It's not like a Whitebeard versus Roger, where, you know, they were on the island fighting for days and days and days. I think this is going to be more of like a real war, where, you know, it's just one large battle, one day, somebody comes out on top, somebody, you know, gets kicked to the side. Now, it's interesting because this chapter exposed a lot. For one, King is gorgeous. Like, this man is like, he's I mean, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. Which is, I don't want to say expected, because it's not expected, but it's appropriate, considering the fact that the Lunarians were considered like the gods of the world before the Celestial Dragons. It makes sense that they're like super gorgeous, or, you know, at least just like really good looking. I mean, I don't know, the Celestial Dragons are pretty hideous, but still, they've had a very long period of time of just like, I mean, I don't want to assume it was inbreeding, but you got 20 kings, 20 families over the course of 800 years. I mean, there's got to be some mixing going on. That's not the point. The point is, it makes sense that King is very special in his appearance, right? So there was really only two ways that Oda could have went with that. Either A, he was really gorgeous, or B, he was really, really just ghastly, like just deformed, sort of like a Katakuri, but maybe worse. That was really the only two ways you could have gone with it, and he chose to make him beautiful. I'm not upset by that. I personally don't really think it matters. I think what's more important is that there has to be some sort of physical attribute that makes King different from everybody else besides just his wings. And they mentioned that he's, in addition to being or to having wings. He also has white hair and dark like brown skin, which is interesting because as far as we know, I mean, we've seen other black people in the world of One Piece, or I guess I shouldn't say black people because I don't know, whatever, but we've seen other like darker skinned people in the One Piece world. But the fact that it's that combination of that and the white hair and the wings, I think that's what sets the Lunarians apart really from everybody else, including like the Shandians or, you know, the Birkins, the other sky people, the other people that we've seen so far who have wings. Oroge, the Mad Monk, he's really big and he has wings. He has big wings too. I'm pretty sure, sort of similar to King's, but I think King's wings are actually black. I gotta go back and look at it. Hold on, but yeah, there's just like there's so much going on that I'm really not shocked, nor am I upset about how fast the fights are going. I think it honestly kind of makes sense. But yeah, man, so we also get to see a flashback in this chapter of King meeting Kaido, and I'm assuming this is around maybe 30 years ago. I think Tekking did his review, and he kind of crunched the numbers and got a little bit more in depth as far as like how old they might have been in this flashback. If Kaido's forming his own crew, obviously this is after the God Valley incident, which was, I believe, they said around 40 years ago. So this is probably around 35 years ago, post God Valley. Maybe Kaido has been trying to go at it, you know, on his own, being just the big, strong guy that he is. I know it was mentioned that he was captured and tortured and sentenced to death multiple times. So that probably happened in the years following God Valley when he was on his own. Or it could have been before, who knows? As we know, Rox got a lot of his crew members through like Davy backfights and like stealing crew members and just taking people and, you know, basically just trying to put together this all-star team of pirates back on Full of Lead Island. So a lot of the stories that we've heard about Kaido could be pre-Rox or it could be post-Rox. But we do know that when he was on the Rox crew, he was an apprentice. So chances are he probably wouldn't be getting captured and sentenced to death and experimented on and all that by the Marines before becoming a pirate or a full-fledged pirate, right? So this scene where we see King and Kaido meeting, I'm pretty sure it's probably around 30 to 35, maybe even 38 years ago, right? Just sometime between then and 40 years ago when Rox was disbanded. So it was pretty interesting, especially considering the fact that Kaido mentioned that he heard about he knew about the endurance test that they were doing on King, and this leads me to believe that Kaido was probably being experimented on at the same time. He said he was busting out. I don't think he was just in holding. I think he was at a facility where he was actually being tested on. My guess is this is probably Punk Hazard. This is probably the time when Vegapunk is trying to get some of Kaido's his DNA, to make the artificial devil fruit that Momonosuke now has. As far as what happened with King, so here's the interesting part, right? So we know that Queen, Judge, and Vegapunk worked together at some point, and Caesar, I believe. Excuse me. They worked together, and they were the group of scientists known as MADS, right? Or they worked in MADS. So the fact that King and Kaido were being tested on in the same facility means that increases the chances of Sanji having Lunarian DNA, right? Which is what enables him to do his Diable Jambe and all of that. Now, what's interesting is if that is the case, right? If these are all happening at the same time, what would that mean for Kaido recruiting or meeting Queen? Because if Kaido is at the facility where Vegapunk and I'm assuming Judge are testing on Kaido and King, Queen should also be there working with them. So that brings a pretty, it sort of throws a wrench into the idea that this is Punk Hazard, or that Queen worked together with Vegapunk and Judge on an equal level. It might have been that Queen was an apprentice, right? He might have been working as sort of like their assistant. He might have been somebody who was an aspiring scientist who was working under them but had hopes or dreams of, you know, being a scientist on the same level as them one day, but maybe Judge looked down on him. It does seem like Queen holds a little bit of resentment or some type of like grudge against Judge. That rhymed. So who knows? That might have something to do with it. And it might even have something to do with why Queen might have left to go join Kaido. But it would present a pretty interesting dynamic, because part of the reason why King was recruited by Kaido was because Kaido admired his toughness. He saw the type of test that they were putting him through and that he, you know, withstood pretty much all of it. And Kaido was like, "You're really strong. I want you in my crew." It doesn't really seem like Queen had anything or would have anything at that point that would make Kaido say the same thing to him, because he would have no examples to look at of Queen's strength, right? He would have just been just another scientist working at that facility. So that's interesting. That's one thing to think about. Seeing how King was recruited makes me wonder even more how Queen was recruited, considering the fact that, you know, Queen had a relationship, a working relationship with probably King and Kaido's captors, right? The guys that were holding them hostage and experimenting on them. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think that's something that we should probably look at. Speaking of Judge, we have a new cover story, The Escape from Whole Cake Island, the Germa 66. So we saw in the last cover story Beiji's Oh My Family, their escape from Whole Cake Island. Now we're going to get to see Judges and the Germa 66 getting away from Whole Cake. I'm not disinterested in this, but I do feel like the thing that we all want to know is how the hell did Jinbei and the Sun Pirates get away from Whole Cake Island, right? Like the whole thing with them, not Judge, because I know Judge, he was like, I'm out of here. I don't give a fuck about the Straw Hats. But with the Germa 66 and the Sun Pirates staying behind to essentially help the Straw Hats escape, seeing this and hopefully in the future seeing how the Sun Pirates escape is going to shed a lot of light on how Jinbei exactly came to be with the Straw Hats now, how he made it to Wano, where the Sun Pirates are now. Jinbei kind of came up and it was just like all smiles and everything's great. Hey, happy to be back. You know, I made it. I promised I was going to come. But there was never any explanation as far as how they got away. The Germa or the Sun Pirates. I don't think Sanji asked any questions either. Like, hey, did, you know, my dad make, he wouldn't say my dad. He would say Judge. Did the Germa make it out okay? There was never any concern or anything like that. Even when Jinbei was face to face with Big Mom, she was just like, oh, you're here. Like, there was never any, she hinted at there possibly being some issues, but there was nothing specifically said about, you know, oh yeah, you made it. You know, I killed Aladdin. Like, there was nothing, anything. There was nothing like that. So I'm hoping that with this cover story, or maybe if there has to be a next one, the Sun Pirates escape from Whole Cake Island, that we just get a little bit more information on how exactly they made it out and how they did it without any casualties, or if there were casualties, how many and who. Maybe, you know, is Aladdin dead? If Aladdin was dead, I don't think Jinbei would be with the Straw Hats. So I think he would be like, you know, I got to take care of my guys. I got to at least escort them back to, you know, Fishman Island, and then I can rejoin with you guys. But I can't leave the Fishman Pirates without a captain, you know, just so I can come back to you guys. I think if Aladdin died, Jinbei would have just that sense of responsibility, like, all right, I gotta help them out first. So I don't think Aladdin's dead, but somebody had to die, I'm sure. whether it's Reiju or, you know, Aladdin's wife, who was actually one of Big Mom's children. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'm interested in that for sure. What else? Is there anything else of interest in this chapter? Let me see. Let me go through it. So Sanji passes out. That was to be expected, I think. So, unfortunately, it seems like my theory has been disproven. So, I remember in the last chapter, or maybe the chapter before that, I think it was the chapter before that, I mentioned that I thought Zoro was going to have to use Kinemon's technique to cut King, right? Then maybe he was going to have to use a technique to cut fire in order to cut a Lunarian, that maybe their bodies were not made of fire, but sort of, like I said with the Sea Prism Stone, like their bodies were to fire what Sea Prism Stone is to the ocean, right? They just gave off that same kind of energy. That seems to have been disproven. So Zoro was able to cut King normally like he would cut anything else or anybody else. However, it does seem like there was some sort of trick with his flames. So when the flames on his back go out, King is extremely fast. He's much faster, right? His attacks are much faster, but his defenses are weak. So when his flames are on, he's super strong and his defenses are super strong, but he moves a lot slower. His movements are a little bit more predictable, but it doesn't matter because Zoro can't cut him anyway. So Zoro kind of figures that out, and he realizes that he needs to attack when King's flames go out, and he does that, and he cuts him. It isn't really explained whether or not the fight is over, but he does manage to cut him, and he does manage to cut him pretty bad. Like he's pretty injured, but again, it doesn't necessarily say whether or not the fight is over. I don't think it is. I think it's probably going to continue on. I don't know for how long. I think it might be sort of like Sanji, like what we saw with Sanji in the last chapter. Sanji got a really good hit in. But the fight didn't officially end until this chapter, where it's announced that in the pleasure hall, Sanji versus Queen, the victory goes to Sanji. I think we'll probably get something like that next week for Zoro, if it gets announced, or if the fight still isn't actually over. There might be a few more attacks that Zoro has to deal out before King is officially done. And I mean, with King being the right hand of Kaido, it only makes sense that King isn't actually done yet. I think that would be a little bit anticlimactic. But if not anticlimactic, that's not true, but just fast, like I said. And that's what a lot of people are saying, that these fights are going by kind of quick, which, it is what it is. There's a lot of fighting left to do. We still got to catch up with some other people. Like I said, Jinbei and Who's Who, we got to see what's going on with that. We got to see where Nami and Otama and Usopp are. We got to check up on Chopper. We got to see how Luffy is doing lastly. And then, of course, there's also the fight happening now between Yamato, X-Drake, and Apu. And also, we have Kid and Law versus Big Mom. So there's a lot of fighting still left to do. Not to mention the fact that the island is still hovering over the flower capital. So we'll see. There's a lot left. I think what are we in now? Act 3 of Wano. I think Act 3 might be coming to a close soon. I think after this victory, there might be just a couple other things that have to happen. Act 4 is probably going to be really short. Act 4 might actually be just the conclusion of the battle in general. Maybe Luffy beats Kaido. Maybe Big Mom and Kid and Law beat Big Mom, and that's just all of Act 4. The conclusion of those two fights. And then Act 5 is the overall arc conclusion. They go back, they have their big party. Momo is named the new shogun, so on and so forth, right? All the things that we expect are going to happen. However, I do think the one wrench that's kind of like thrown into this whole thing is those world government ships that are on the way. Those ships kind of make it a little bit harder to map out the flow of the arc from here on out, because if they're going to be involved in the fighting, you would think that they're going to come sooner rather than later, right? But if they're not going to be involved in the fighting, or maybe, you know, they get word that Kaido was defeated, they decide to come now, who knows? It depends on what their actual goal is, right? If their goal is just to come and take Nico Robin and run and annex Wano, that might not take them all that long. If their goal is to actually come and start setting up operations, start maybe harvesting some Sea Prism Stone, start building things like actually imprisoning Kaido and Big Mom and Luffy, if they try to do that, like actually capturing all the pirates that are there, that's probably gonna be something that's gonna want to be handled sooner rather than later, right? They're not gonna get to Wano and just kind of hang out until everything's over and then step in. They're gonna come in and step in right now when everybody's weak, right after the battle. So that it depends on what their goal is exactly, as far as like as soon as they get there, and also just the outcome of the battles, right? If Kaido wins, yes, he'll be weak, but what on those ships is still strong enough to tackle even a weakened Kaido? I don't know if there's anything. This might be the debut of the SSG, honestly. If those ships are coming with the idea that they can take on Kaido in his weakened state and Big Mom, whatever we saw or whatever the SSG is supposed to be, we might be seeing that in Wano. Or here's another theory, and this is why I think the sort of roadmap that I set out of Act 3 ending with some of these smaller fights, and then Act 4 being the bigger fights ending Big Mom, Kaido, Luffy, Kid, Law, and then Act 5 is just the conclusion, is if the Grand Fleet shows up or if Shanks shows up. If one of those two things happen, they can handle those ships that are outside of Wano from the world government, as long as the SSG isn't on them, right? So if one of those two parties shows up and takes care of those other ships, then that's going to basically eliminate that issue, and the rest of the arc can be just the main fights, right? We don't have to worry about the world government ships anymore, at least not right now. So it all depends on what's on those ships and whether or not somebody else is going to come to kind of take on those ships, because right now they're outside of Wano, they're not there yet. So if somebody else is coming, they're probably going to get there at this, not at the same time, but close to around the same time. They're both going to be on the oceans outside of Wano together around the same time, waiting for the battle to either be over, or if it's somebody like the Grand Fleet coming to help Luffy, they're going to be coming and trying to get into Wano immediately, so they're going to have to go past those world government ships. So we'll see. There's a lot to look forward to. Either way, great chapter. Felt kind of short, but it's fine. We're getting close to the end of the year. That was the last chapter of the year, I believe, and you know, it is what it is. So looking forward to 2022. A lot of stuff happening in 2022. Oda already released, I think there was in Jump Festa, he released a statement. He's really hype about Shanks. I know Shanks film Red is coming out, or One Piece film Red is coming out next year, and then also there's going to be some in-story canon stuff happening with Shanks apparently that Oda is really excited about. I remember, was it last year? I think it was last year. It was around the time, I can't remember, but he was saying like, Sabo and Vivi and all this other stuff, and we haven't gotten to that yet. So I'm assuming that next year we're going to have a lot of Shanks stuff towards the end of the year, or possibly even next year. If, Wano concludes and we do what we're expecting we're going to do, where we have another period where maybe the Straw Hats get a newspaper or whatever, we jump around, see a bunch of different perspectives, what's happening around the One Piece world, what's going on with Sabo, what's going on with Vivi, is Cobra alive, all that other stuff, what is the world government doing, we're gonna see all of that before we eventually go to the next arc, depending on what the next arc is. So yeah, all in all, great chapter. I think if I had to give it a rating, I'd say it's tough. It had a lot, but it's not a 10 I can't keep giving it 10 out of 10s. I would say 9 out of 10. It had just about everything that you want in a chapter. It just wasn't particularly mind-blowing or amazing or anything like that, but it was really good though. So yeah, man, all in all, really good chapter. Stay tuned if you want to see more videos. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. That really helps out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace.